Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June Plenum on Sephardi Education and Awareness. My name is Benjamin. I'm the Deputy Chair of the Education Committee, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. Because this is an education plenum, and I think the first education plenum the board has held in quite some time, we're going to start with a little educational activity. So I'm going to say to you something that I would never say to my students, which is please get out your phones. There is a poll that we're all going to do together to help us understand the knowledge that we come into this room with. There's a diverse audience here. So we're just going to answer a few questions together, look at the results, and see what they might teach us. So can everyone please, and I'll read out the instructions because they're small, go to www.menti.com, and when it prompts you for a code, type in 97860398. So again, go to www.menti.com and type in for the code 97860398. Give you a few seconds. I'll read out the number again. No, may as well. www.menti.com, and the code is 97860398. So the first question for tonight is no internet. That's a challenging question. The first question, which you should be able to see on your phones from memory, is what is the best way to promote Sephardi and Mizrachi history, culture, and perspective in the education sector? Thank you. The options are A, work with Jewish day schools to support the inclusion of Sephardi and Mizrachi content. B, record the traditions and stories of Sephardi and Mizrachi people in the community. C, provide quality content for educators they can use in the classroom. And D, all of the above. You don't have those? I'll give you the code again. The code is, that's okay, hold on one second. The code is, I don't know. The code is 97860398. This is where I love a whiteboard. There we go for next time. 97860398. Okay. 97860398. And we'll see if we can get the results up. There we go, fantastic. So I can see that we already have 30, 40 plus responses. Yes, sorry. We already have 40 plus responses, and I can see that the majority by far is all of the above. For those of you that selected this option, I have excellent news, which is all of the things that are in this question have been the work of the Jewish Board of Deputies and partner organizations like Sephardi and Mizrachi Voices and the November 30 Committee for the past few years. So this is not so much a new event, but rather an extension of all the hard work that has been done by those people. By the grace of God, next question, please. All right. Next question. What proportion are Sephardi Jews of the global Jewish population? The options are 5 to 10%, 15 to 20%, 40 to 50%, and 70 to 80%. I can hear people thinking out loud. I'll give you another few seconds. This is what we call in the world of education a trick question, because there is no reliable answer to this question. Because Sephardi and Mizrachi questions are not usually included on surveys and censuses of Jewish communities. In Gen 17, there was also not a question about Sephardi and Mizrachi heritage. So the best number that I saw online was about 15 to 20 people, 15 to 20% of people are Sephardi and Mizrachi descended for citizenship purposes, but we really don't know. Next question. How do you best connect with your heritage, Sephardi, Ashkenazi, or otherwise? Is it through hearing the music, through eating the food, through praying in a certain way, through socializing in the same circles, or other? And you can pick multiple for this one. There appears to be a strong consensus that eating the food is something that seems to connect all of us, which I had a guess at before we ran this. I'll also note that socializing in the same circles is a beautiful response. And again, I'm happy to see such a diversity of people here tonight. Perhaps you also choose to eat food while socializing. That's a true beauty. Last question. How would you like your children to identify? Would you like them to be just Jewish, Sephardi, Ashkenazi, Mizrachi, a mixture of the above, or proudly identify with their heritage? So what I found so fascinating about these results is that I think a lot of people want their children to proudly identify with their heritage. Perhaps that heritage includes multiple things, perhaps it is Sephardi or Mizrachi, but really the Jewish element is quite strong. And also a mixture of the above, noting that the term Ashkenazi has been tossed around here and there, and perhaps there is some space for that. Next question. When did you first learn about the Farhud? The first response is when I was growing up, 10 years or more ago, in the last 10 years, in the last 5 years, in the last year or less, or I don't know about it. So again, I'm not here to make statistical analysis on the fly, but I don't know about it is a really important response, and we're really, really proud to have you with us tonight, so that you can come on that learning journey with us. I know that for myself, it was really in the last 5 years when I started working with the Board of Deputies, and I think lots of other people have also, more recently, as the community has really made the effort to commemorate the Farhud, started learning about it. I think there's one more question. What would you most like to learn about Sephardi and Mizrachi history? And the options are? There are no options. In fact, this is a very good question. I did know that. I'd love to see a nice wall of response. Everything. I'm going to read out some responses because the text is likely very small. Everything, lots. History, daily life of people, as much as I can. The Sephardi dispersion, special traditions, history and culture, the educated, more songs, the story on refugees from Islamic lands, the history, their language, and I don't think we can scroll down. Everyone else's responses. Great to see. So it's been really interesting learning more about this crowd, and I hope that in answering some of these questions you have the opportunity to reflect on why you're here and the people that are in this room. I'm now going to hand over to Joshua Moses, the chair of the committee, to continue with the Farhud commemoration.
Thank you, Ben. Hi all, I'm the Chair of the Education Committee of the New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies and also co-founder of an organisation/committee called Yalla, which I think is quite telling by its name. This year is the 81st anniversary that we commemorate the Farhud, a massacre of Iraqi Jews in their homes and their communities where they had lived for thousands of years. This year we also commemorate the 71st anniversary of the end of the Iraqi Jewish community with a 1950 government decree termed the Taskhit, forcing Iraqi Jewry to forfeit their citizenship. This year has also seen the introduction of a draconian law in Iraq that now criminalises any contact between Iraqis and Israelis, punishable by execution or lifelong imprisonment. This year, we not only focus on the tragic events of the Farhud and remember those that were brutally murdered, but we focus on how our next generations will take this piece of history within the broader scope of Sephardi Mizrachi history forward. Please turn your attention to the screen with the first clip explaining the Farhud, followed by a landmark SBS interview with Julie Littman last year that marks the first time Australian media had publicly acknowledged the events of the Farhud.
After a massacre that shattered Baghdad's Jewish community, one survivor hopes sharing her history will create a more peaceful future. She's part of a special memorial to the lives lost over a traditional Jewish holiday in 1941.
From memory. And I asked somebody, I said, how do you do it? Go and look at this.
It's a tradition for Iraqi Jews to make kahi for Shavuot. The 95-year-old fled to Australia after a violent riot against the Jewish community in Iraq.
They were running in the street like crazy, you know, with swords, with knives, whatever, you know, they just want to find somebody to kill or to hurt.
On the 1st of June 1941, a Nazi-inspired mob stormed Baghdad streets. It became known as Farhud, or violent dispossession in Arabic. The massacre left 180 dead and hundreds more wounded, ending the peaceful coexistence between Jews and Muslims.
We were so close with them till the end. You know, people can be very friendly and they can be so against you in a matter of seconds.
Until Farhud, Iraq was home to the oldest Jewish diaspora in the world.
And they did hold political office, they did have intellectual roles, they saw themselves as really part of Iraqi society, contributing to poetry and literature and, Arabic life there.
But life changed for Iraqi Jews when the British began losing power in the region and after Israel was established.
They were left out of this sort of national uprising, this creation of a new Iraq, as well as really the prevalence of anti-Semitism showed them that their home was really no longer safe.
Soon after the massacre, many Jews left on the condition they gave up their property and assets. Julie's grandfather had been headmaster and owner of a prominent Jewish school.
And I don't know what happened to it. They never got any money back or anything. That was all lost.
In the decade that followed Farhud, most of Iraq's 150,000 Jews left with little more than their memories. But the legacy of the Iraqi Jewish community continues as a living tradition 80 years on.
You can't lose everything. It's in me. You see my sister, the one that came to Australia.
Her story, now part of history to teach future generations. Nadine Silva, SBS World News.
I would now like to invite Julie Lippman to light a candle in commemoration of the many victims of the Farhud. She is accompanied by her granddaughter.
Do I say anything?
I would now like to invite Alfred Galbay to light a candle in commemoration of the victims of the Farhud, and he will be accompanied by his son.
Light this candle in memory of our brethren who were murdered during the small Farhud and the big Farhud.
Please rise as we now take a moment's silence in commemoration of the many victims of the Farhud that are presented on screen. Please be seated, thank you. I'd like to now ask Elana Benjamin and Michael Sassoon to please join me on stage as we move into the panel discussion around raising awareness and education of Sephardi Mizrachi history.
So firstly, I'd like to thank you both for joining me this evening and giving up your time to discuss this very important topic. Elana, I want to thank you, number one, for stepping in last minute for Miriam, also as a co-founder of Sephardi Mizrachi Voices. And I would also like to acknowledge, there we go, we've got another microphone. I would also like to acknowledge Rashaleen Barda, who was unable to join us this evening as a result of health reasons, and commend her on recently receiving an OAM for contribution to the Jewish community, and more specifically, contribution to the Sephardi Mizrachi Jewish community. So tonight is one of the first times we are having an open, honest and frank discussion about how we as a community can ensure the Sephardi Mizrachi narrative is taught and how we can continue to raise further awareness. This will be an informal discussion, bounded by time limits, just for the sake of the plenum. And we'll try and have comments and questions at the end for any and all those who would like to ask them. To start off, I'd like to start with Elana. And I'd like to ask you to please introduce yourself, number one, and your journey as a Sephardi Mizrachi Jew in the Jewish community.
Hi everyone, my name is Elana Benjamin. My story, can't hear me? Okay, you can tell I'm not used to using a microphone. My name is Elana Benjamin. Can you hear me yet? Yep. Better? Yes. Okay, I'll start again. My name is Elana Benjamin. My story is that both my parents were born in Bombay and they grew up there. They got married here. I was born here, and I grew up in a large extended Sephardi family and as part of the wider Sephardi community. My childhood home was filled with the aroma of spices and curries. English was peppered with Hindustani and Arabic words and phrases, and the traditions of Iraqi Jewry were followed. At the same time, I was entirely educated in Jewish day schools. But at school, we followed the liturgy and customs of the Ashkenazi majority, not my family's Iraqi Sephardi ways. And what this meant was there was a deep chasm between my home life and my school life. At school, I dipped apple in honey on Rosh Hashanah. At home, I ate apple jam. At school, I used words like chutzpah and shlep. At home, it was inshallah. The prayer tunes in the Sephardi synagogue on Saturday mornings were unrecognisable from the melodies I sang in my classroom. I learned to move seamlessly between my two worlds, Sephardi and Ashkenazi, fitting into both, but not quite belonging in either. By the time I was at university, I realised that I hardly knew anything about my heritage. I'd finished high school with an in-depth knowledge of the history of European Jewry, but I'd never even heard of the Farhud. I knew nothing about the hundreds of thousands of Jews who lived in countries like Egypt, Iran, Syria, and Morocco. And I had no idea that Baghdad had been a flourishing centre of Jewish life during the Middle Ages. And so I began researching my family's story and the history of the Iraqi Jews that immigrated to India. Over a 10-year period, I wrote a book called My Mother's Spice Cupboard, A Journey from Baghdad to Bombay to Bondi, which was published in 2012, to give a voice to the story of the Baghdadi Jews of Bombay. There is so much richness and beauty in the culture, the liturgy and customs of Sephardi and Mizrachi Jewry, and at least in Australia, this heritage has been mostly invisible instead of being celebrated. Thankfully, we're starting to see a change, but there is so much more to be done.
Thank you, Elana. Michael, I might throw to you now.
Sure.
Please introduce yourself, your journey as a Sephardi Mizrachi Jew, as well as why you're passionate about this area.
Sure, thanks. Can everyone hear me? Is that right?
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to say how wonderful it is to be sharing, to be on a panel with you, Elana. Not a few weeks ago, we were having a discussion. I was sitting in the staff room at Mizrachi College, and we were discussing this very issue. And it's only thanks to organisations such as New South Wales Jewish Board of Deputies and places like Mizrachi College, concerned parents such as yourself, and passionate teachers and parents such as us, that we come together at events like this. So I hope that doesn't count for my 2 minutes, but I did want to say thank you. Thank you to the Jewish Board of Deputies for arranging this. It's wonderful. Look, my journey is intertwined with your family as a Sephardic Jew. I have many people to thank, and I look at my journey as a Jew and as a Sephardic Jew as a number of stepping stones along the way. My father would come in to downstairs TV room on a Saturday morning. That's how I knew it. I didn't know it as Shabbat. And he'd say, Mick, do you want to come to Sephardi synagogue? And I'm going, sure, I'm going to synagogue. And I said, oh, I've never been up to this level in Mario Brothers before, Dad, I'm sorry. I'll just some other time. And my father made that other time. So a couple of weeks later, maybe a month later, he asked again, yes, Dad, I'd love to come. Fast forward to my bar mitzvah, and your uncle, Sam Benjamin, was incredibly influential, and your father's encouragement years later as well, and throughout the years, and your mother as well. Elana, I've become who I am in terms of the pride in Sephardic culture. I decided to become a teacher after a stint in marketing, and I learned with, I was very lucky to learn with Suzanne Rutland and Netta Labi, but with role models such as Ruben Shellim of Indian Iraqi heritage and Michael Benstock of Spanish and Portuguese, I'm one of the lucky ones. And as a teacher, I wanted to pass on that luck to other students. The other part of the other stepping stone would be B'nai Akiva, that as I became a madrich there, they said, you need to be a good dugma, you need to be a good role model. And they said, so you have to come to synagogue, to shul. And I said, great, but I'm Sephardi. So as a way of rebelling against this I said, I'm going to Sephardi synagogue. And that helped me on the journey as well. And then probably lastly, Aaron would pull me up in synagogue, and with other boys such as David Meyer, Mark Meyer, Robert Elias. He pulled us up to this area just like you see here, and we'd sing songs, and even if we wouldn't know them well, we were involved. And later on, at age 17, the strangest thing happened. I was heading towards this perhaps, but to have the words when you wake up in the morning, become a chazan at Sephardi synagogue. Why? Why should that? Why? Go drive a car and talk about Sephardic heritage. Why should I be a chazan at Sephardi synagogue? Yet those are the words that woke up within my head. That brought me back after bar mitzvah training to Sam Benjamin. We made it happen. Went to Yeshiva University. I learned Sephardic Chazanut with Rabbi Moshe Tesson, and even more formative experiences with Hacham Yaakov Menashe of Great Neck, New York. And I'll just end on, this is the kind of approach I had to Sephardic heritage and culture. I wanted it. That's the difference. So after a Shabbat at Hacham Menashe's place, all the songs that I sang at that table that I learned, I then took my camera, found a secret recording device function, and I recorded as best as I could all the tunes that I learned that Shabbat. So you gotta want it. That's what I mean.
Thank you both. Thank you for sharing your story and a bit of your journey up until now. I think I probably identified with both of your stories, growing up in Sephardi synagogue as well. So those names do ring a bell. I think moving on now to some of the key challenges that are facing the Sephardi Mizrachi community in Australia within the Sydney community. I might throw to Elana now again to hear your thoughts on where you think some of those key challenges are.
Thank you. I've identified 5 key challenges facing Sephardi Mizrachi Jewry in our community. Number 1, we are a minority in an Ashkenazi community. Historically, we have been invisible and had no voice in the community. And while this is slowly changing, now we have the annual Farhud commemoration. There was a Jews from Islamic Lands exhibition at the Sydney Jewish Museum. There's hard work being done by the Board of Deputies Education Committee, Ms. Plenum, for example, and by dedicated, committed teachers like Michael.
And
parents. At our day school. But change takes time. That leads me to our second challenge, which is time is running out to document the stories of Sephardi Mizrachi Jews that immigrated to Australia because the community is an ageing one. Our stories are undocumented and in serious threat of being lost forever. The third challenge is because our traditions haven't been taught through the day school system, and most of us, what I would call like first generation Australians, have assimilated into the Ashkenazi community. For example, my husband is Ashkenazi, and most of my peers took Ashkenazi spouses. Our Sephardi Mizrachi traditions haven't been preserved and they're dying out. So as a quick example, at my Pesach Seder this year, I kind of had a moment of, oh, my parents are getting older. I actually don't know how to lead a Sephardi Seder. I've kind of absorbed bits and pieces by osmosis. My brother knows it all. He lives in Melbourne. And actually what happened was a few days into Pesach, my daughter sat down with my dad and recorded him reading the whole Seder, like on video, which is amazing. But it's kind of an ad hoc solution. It's not a solution to the broader problem. The fourth challenge that I identified is that the broader Jewish community has been slow to embrace diversity and inclusion. And as a result, the other key challenge is a lack of awareness in the wider Jewish community of the Sephardi Mizrachi experience. And if Joshua will let me, if I have time, I can give you a couple of examples. Sure. Do I have time? Sure. So, I don't know how long ago it was, Michael, maybe 2 years ago, that Moriah High School held an assembly to commemorate the Farhud that I was invited to as a guest, and one of my co-founders from Sephardi Mizrachi Voices was invited to, and there was some footage of Michael reading some prayers in the Sephardi tune, and also of some bar mitzvah boys reading in the Sephardi tune, and the high school kids it was so completely unfamiliar to them that they burst out laughing. It was almost as if they had no recognition that it was actually part of their religion and part of their, not their personal tradition, but kind of the tradition of their Jewish brothers and sisters. So that was one example. The other example was a few months ago. Well, as I already told you, I've married into an Ashkenazi family. And a couple of months ago, I was at my in-laws' place, and I can't remember the exact conversation, but at some point I said, there's no Yizkor service, and so for those of you who are unfamiliar, Yizkor is an Ashkenazi memorial service for people who have died. I said, there's no Yizkor service in a Sephardi synagogue, in a Sephardi prayer service. And my mother-in-law said, really? How is that possible? Because she just had no idea. And the other way of looking at that is, how is it possible that in our community we have, so many of us have such a view that is so narrow that we don't realise that alternate practices exist? So that is my answer to your question.
Thank you very much, Elana. Michael, I'll throw the same question to you now.
Just to dovetail onto what you were saying, Elana, it took a little while for me to work out that in fact, at Sephardi synagogue, in Sephardi communities, we have a hashkabah, a mini service. As a proud Ashkenazi, I do identify as Sephardi, but I'm proudly Ashkenazi as well. Thanks, Mum, for the term. We actually do commemorate on a daily basis, and it made me very proud. But it wasn't. You're talking about recognition that there is no Yizkor, and that no one really understands that. No one's heard of Hashkabah. No one knows about those kinds of things. But it took me a while to work out what Sam was doing at the end of the service, and I learned. It took a while. You identified 5 primary issues facing the community. I broke it up into 3. The first one being engagement. So we're talking about current challenges. What I find is no matter how much effort, for example, Rabbi and Rabbanit Dalia Shriki go to, sometimes if you build it, they will not come. It's been very, very difficult over the years, over the decades, If children haven't grown up and moved country, youth and families would shop around at other shuls where they felt more comfortable, where the kiddush didn't have such ethnic food, perhaps. Or, as they feel that not enough couples come to our synagogues, they'll go where their friends and family are. In contrast, when my wife agreed, my luck, to move to Australia, I said, we'll try out the other synagogues as well. Let's find out wherever you're comfortable. And she said, no, we're going to your synagogue. She was adamant, and I owe her a great deal for that. In terms of engagement, COVID-19 has affected all communities, but it's affected us triple, I think. The elders are afraid to come, perhaps, in some cases, some, not all, and the younger generation sees that even fewer people are coming. So we have to build back triple as well. We do have my wife's initiative of we call it Sephardi Clubhouse, and it is a WhatsApp group. So if there are young couples with young children who want to be on that group to know which other young couples or young families are coming that Shabbat, sometimes it's nice to know that you'll have another young family or young couple to speak with, and that this WhatsApp group facilitates that. The second is ashkenormativity, which you said in pretty much the same words, that it's systemic in education. So, for example, my daughter's teacher is very, very open to the soft matzah that we ate in Israel this year. He loved to hear about that. Sorry, Shaul, I thought of you after the fact. I know you and I love soft matzah. It surprises many of my students at Mizrachi College. But there's a song that says, we wash 6 times like all Jews do. And we follow the Andalusian Sephardi tradition, and we only wash once on each hand. So my daughter took it on board to change the words of the song herself. So I rewarded her with not just praise, but a whole pack of M&Ms. She was thrilled. But this is the kind of thing that we as parents and community members have to continue to do, to encourage this diversity in our own children. Systemic in education, we have words like challah, spelt as it is, Shabbos, shul, Sephardi shul was what I heard. Tefillah, Shmuel, Avraham, Rabbi, why not Chacham? What's wrong with Chacham? Etc. What's wrong with Knis, Sla'a, etc. for the other words for synagogue. Esnoga if you're Spanish Portuguese. Ashkenormativity within the Sephardic community is of greater concern, and that's where you're talking about assimilation. I would call it intra-assimilation, if you prefer. We're not talking about intermarriage or intramarriage, we're talking about intra-assimilation, and that is a major challenge, where the Sephardi youth do not want to identify as. They don't feel comfortable, or they feel in the minority. Some Sephardim adopt Chabad customs, or Ashkenazi, and this ends up often in cultural shmad, if you will, where we lose what you're talking, we lose our background. We lose our heritage because there was an opportunity, and it's an opportunity lost. And lastly, the perceived otherness of Sephardi culture. We have a very small community, as you say, Elana. We need to normalize the culture, and it shouldn't be relevant that 15 to 20% of Jews are of Sephardic or Mizrachi heritage. The key is that every Jew should feel that Sephardi, Yemenite, Italki, Ashkenazi, be it Hasidic or Mitnag, that it belongs to them equally. I'm very lucky to work with a full-blooded Sephardi who knows Ashkenazi truth. I myself am Ashkenazi, as I mentioned, and a full-blooded Ashkenazi Jew who's sitting in front of me now, who is as equally passionate about Sephardic culture as Ashkenazi culture, as it should be. And I'm very, very lucky.
Thank you both for that detailed explanation. I think some of those challenges that you mentioned, some of them we need to solve in the short term. Some of them I think we need to solve both in the short term but also in the long term as well. If we can sort of flip that on its head and sort of go to some of the solutions then, and you mentioned a few already. How can we raise greater awareness of Sephardi Mizrachi history, heritage and culture? And what educational avenues do we have available in order to do so? And Elana, I'll throw it to you now.
So I am not an educator, so I'm going to leave the second limb of that question, which was the educational avenues as a solution, to our esteemed educator on the panel, Michael. What I would like to focus on is how we can use the Sephardi Voices project to raise awareness of Sephardi Mizrachi history, culture and heritage. Sephardi Voices, for those of you who may not have heard of it, is a digital archive that documents and preserves the life stories of Jews who lived in Islamic lands using videos, audio and photographs. Sephardi Voices is an extension of what Steven Spielberg began with the Shoah Foundation, which I'm sure you have all heard of. However, of the 52,000 testimonies collected by the Shoah Foundation, which is a tremendous body of work, less than 100 were from Sephardim, and not one was from a survivor of the Farhud. The whole point of Sephardi Voices is to collect oral testimony from primary sources. That is, to interview people who have living memories of the communities and the lands from which they came, and to digitise that history in order to preserve it. In Sydney, we at Sephardi Mizrachi Voices Australia are collaborating with Sephardi Voices International and Sephardi Voices UK to collect local stories and to change the narrative of Jewish peoplehood from one that is predominantly Eurocentric to one that is more inclusive. To date, we've recorded 4 testimonies, and our goal is to collect as many as possible and to build a website with highlights clipped from each of our interviews to make the stories easily accessible. But we are only a grassroots organisation. Literally, we are 4 women in our 40s with jobs and with families. We are time and resource poor, and quite frankly, it's an uphill battle. Jackie Vasilevsky from the Sydney Jewish Museum's Community Stories program has been assisting us, and she has been fabulous. But Jackie and her team have only committed to doing 5 or 6 interviews at this stage, and they're all audio testimony that they're recording. And we at Sephardi Mizrachi Voices Australia felt very strongly that we wanted to have video footage too. We have 0 funding, so right now there are members of Sephardi Mizrachi Voices Australia who are paying for a videographer and for video editing out of their own pockets, which is obviously not sustainable in the medium or in the long term. And I mean, really, there needs to be proper funding for the project so that we can maximise its potential for raising awareness of Sephardi Mizrachi history, culture and heritage. I know that wasn't exactly what you asked, but thank you.
Thank you very much. So to the esteemed teacher, I might throw the educational question to you.
All right. There's a lot to say. There's a lot to do. There's a lot that can be done and is being done. On the drive back from Canberra recently, my wife and I spent 2 hours coming up with ideas. So 2 hours worth of ideas we hope to provide in other avenues than a couple of minutes tonight. But you know, the first step is to recognize that certainly the Andalusian Sephardic tradition of Hacham Jose Farhud, which I'm a fan, is an avenue to successfully integrate, yet not assimilate. That's the first thing we need to be proud of as Sephardim. In terms of an educational focus, therefore, we can look at things from a legal perspective, that everything, the way we see the world, everything is permissible. Everything is allowed to us unless it's not. Therefore, the burden of proof is on anyone who says, that's forbidden, asur, that's not allowed. Right? It's a different mindset. So there's every benefit to every one of us to tap into this. This goes to community members such as yourselves as well as students. And this is the message I give to students in the classroom. We would like to see we would like to see in education simple things like changing the way you, how should I say, you display pronunciation on screen. Put a dot underneath the H to represent het. It's not the same as CH chala. It's chala with a dot underneath. Simple changes. What that does is that acclimatizes our youth not to laugh or giggle at these kinds of things. And the benefit additional is that it is academic level as well. So when they get to university and wish to research more about their Jewish heritage, they will find many Ashkenazi and Sephardi voices that use this methodology. That's just very simple. I teach songs in the classroom. I provide the Sephardic perspective. Years ago, Ben, you and I talked about the importance of meanwhile in Baghdad. So yes, we have a curriculum that in some years focuses on the Ashkenazic perspective, and that's fine. But we, at every second or third lesson, should be giving a meanwhile in Syria. Here's what happened there. And this again aims to normalize. We're talking about short term. This normalizes Sephardic culture, history, and communities. There are a lot of things that we can do in terms of education throughout the community. And I'm really speaking to this group of people, this wonderful group of people today. That's where I'd like to focus. In Israel, when I mentioned we just, I didn't mention, we came back from Israel from Pesach there. And outside of every synagogue, there are A4 sheets or booklets with loads of rabbinic interpretations of this parasha or that part of Pesach, etc. These halachot, this, that, the other. Why can't we produce one A4 flyer, 52 weeks, back to back, and they feature Sephardic Chachamim, or they feature a Sephardic halacha? We can have this printed, and we can provide it at all synagogues. We can provide it in schools, and they can be taken. And it can be an A5 if you want to start small. We can also have, and this was my wife's idea, turn the Shabbat project into an actual project. Let it last a month. One Shabbat's not going to make a project. A month of Shabbatot where you highlight, Nusach Ari, Chabad Nusach, Ashkenazi, Sepharad, for say Mizrachi synagogue, and Eidot HaMizrach. These 4 weeks you have a pack that you provide at each synagogue. For the Eidot HaMizrach week, for the Nusach Ari week, you provide the same pack no matter which synagogue you go to. So if you happen to go to Central Synagogue that week, you still that week will get the Sephardi pack, the Eidot HaMizrach, and take that home with you. And this way it can be shared at the family table. There are a lot of different things we can do. I think the last thing I would suggest here as an educator is educate yourselves. We live in a time and a place where you can pick up your phone and have access to endless shiurim, lectures. You can hear from voices such as Rabbi Shriki of our own community, Rabbi Shimon Aidi from Jewels of Torah, our very own from Canberra. You can hear from Hacham Avi Faur, Joey Faur, Rabbi Yosef Dweck. We're not going to list everyone, but you can go join the Chabura. You can join the Sephardic Brotherhood. Support them. I just happily forked out $185 for my membership to the Chabura because I firmly believe in what they stand for. Do it. And then go online and listen to those shiurim. You love podcasting? Listen to these as you drive to and from work. You have to educate yourselves. You have to want it. And I promise you, through osmosis, it will filter through you to your Friday night table, to your conversations as you go about the community, whether it's with Ashkenazim or Sephardim. You will have what to say. You'll become knowledgeable. You become more informed. But it only happens if you take the time to do it. So do it.
thank you both. I think for the sake of time, we may not have actual time for Q&A, so I may ask a last question on behalf of everyone here that may have gotten up and asked a question or provided a comment. What are, in very short and concise, what are 3 key things that everyone in this room and maybe the wider community, what can they do to further this cause?
Can I go first?
You can go first.
So I don't have an exact. I'm gonna. I prepared something earlier, and Michael, you've been speaking about what individuals can do, and of course, each one of us has power as an individual to learn more about the Sephardi Mizrachi experience, to embrace diversity, to be open to learning new customs and traditions, and to raise our own awareness. For example, by listening to podcasts or reading books, asking questions. But my view is that it is the leadership of our community that needs to take responsibility and act now. Because the Sephardi Mizrachi cause has been left to individuals for the last 4, 5, 6 decades, and this is where we are. So I think that Jewish communal leadership and organisations need to reckon with the reality of Australia's Sephardi Mizrachi experience. That for the most part, we have been overlooked and ignored. That our stories have not been told. That our traditions have not been woven into the fabric of the wider community or into the day schools. Only then can we move forward and create a more inclusive community which not only recognises the Sephardi Mizrachi minority, but which celebrates our uniqueness and our differences. I believe that the Sydney Jewish Museum has a vital role to play. The Australian Jewish Historical Society is very supportive of the Sephardi Mizrachi Voices project, but the AJHS has indicated that the right home for the testimonies we capture is with the Sydney Jewish Museum. It is our hope that the Sydney Jewish Museum will eventually take over, fund and own the Sephardi Mizrachi Voices project. Sorry, the pages are stuck together. More broadly, Sydney's Jewish community needs to keep pace with wider social change and prioritise diversity and inclusion. Sephardi and Mizrachi Jews need to be treated as equals, not as a tokenistic gesture or as an afterthought or to be politically correct. As a community, we need to genuinely broaden our understanding and our acceptance of what it means to be Jewish. And the sooner we do that, the sooner we can reap the rewards. So I would like to leave you with the words of Stephen Bush, who chaired the UK Board of Deputies' recent commission on racial inclusivity in the Jewish community. He wrote, "A proactive attitude to inclusion will draw in many people of all backgrounds who have felt marginalised, left out, or turned off from Jewish life. As a community that often frets about its numbers and its future, giving as many people as possible a sense of belonging and a full ability to participate will nourish, strengthen, and enrich the Jewish community further for the benefit of all its members, which is all of us." Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, three concise actions.
Concise actions. I just have to say, I'm a bit more optimistic. I don't know, maybe youthful, foolish optimism, but maybe it's because I'm working on the ground. You know, Arik Sharon used to say, "Facts on the ground," and I see what we're doing at Mizrachi College, and the future is bright if we keep this up. There's a lot of work to do. We have to keep this up. Send an email to your child's teacher if they're in a Jewish day school. Tell them thank you for introducing this concept or this song or whatever they might be doing in the classroom. Encourage it. Ask for more. Demand gently, kindly, more of your teachers, and I promise you that they will hear the call. You know, when it comes to, on an individual level, concrete, adopt the goal within your family to stop the descending spiral of functional Jewish illiteracy down the generations. This goes for all of Judaism, not just Sephardic Judaism. Educate yourselves, as I said before. You must do it. It won't happen unless you want it. And also the change won't come until all Jews understand that Yemenite heritage belongs to them just as much, 100%. You know, in schools, what we can do is we can teach in Jewish history names such as Rabbi Yehuda Alkalai, Rabbi Bas, Grace Aguilar, who promoted Hebrew as the language for the Jewish people 17 years before Eliezer ben Yehuda. These names, many of you may not have ever heard of. And therein lies the problem. And therein lies the work that we have cut out for us. But it's not just the teachers. It's not just groups of motivated, passionate parents. Each and every one of us, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Temani, Italki, we have what to do. We have our mission. We have what to be passionate about. So let's do it. Let's do it.
Thank you both very much. I think we'll leave it there. So I assume you both will be around later on for socially distanced conversations if you'd like to stay. I'd like to thank you both again for your input and your insights tonight. I think it's been, I would say, eye-opening for everyone here, but also I think it's the start of a conversation as well. And I'd like to everyone please thank these two lovely speakers again. Everyone, we just have a vote of thanks. Thank you again, both. And thank you, Gemma. And before I look to throw to Ben, I just want to reiterate that from what we heard tonight, we heard key challenges. We also heard how we can further educate and raise awareness. And we've heard the great strides that our community has made. But the idea is that the buck hasn't stopped with us. It has stopped with us. But the mission hasn't stopped. That's what I meant to say. The mission continues. And I think in order to solve the challenges that we discussed, and through the actions that we discussed as well, I think we'll be stronger for it as a community in the future. So thank you both again.
What I'm proud to present to you today is something very practical that has been the work of the Education Committee, particularly Janine Joseph, who I'd like to invite. Janine, like myself, is an educator, and Janine has spent the last several years, months, who knows. It's COVID, it's all a blur. Putting together a resource pack for educators on the ijs.org.au website. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to open your phones again. But everything is up there for teachers to really dive into and to begin to understand Sephardi Mizrachi culture, and more importantly, to teach it. Before I ask Janine to introduce us to the resource pack, I just want to also mention a couple of other key people tonight who've helped bring us to where we are, particularly Dr. Myra Samra, Dr. Rashid Barda, OAM, Linda Ben Menashe, the Yalla Committee, the Sephardi and Mizrachi Voices Organization, the November 30th Committee, the JCA, and the Sydney Jewish Museum. A round of applause for all of them. So this is a live, it's very scary live. This is a live demonstration of what the website looks like. Janine, would you like to take the mic?
Thanks, Ben. Okay, as Ben mentioned, I'm Janine, and I'm really excited to present to you this website. The aim of the website is to facilitate, if you were to facilitate the inclusion of Sephardi and Mizrachi content into the curriculum for Jewish and non-Jewish day schools. So as we also heard from Elana, there's time and resource poor issues. So many teachers value and see the need for this inclusion. However, lack resources, time, awareness, knowledge, etc. So the benefits of such a website is the centralizing of the content onto this IJS website. This will allow this space to be collaborative. It will allow teachers and anyone to be able to share music, resources, lesson plans, any ideas they have, so that we can preserve this content and make it more accessible for teachers and even non-educators alike. The second benefit is that it is organised into subject areas, which means that teachers who did not see themselves as able to integrate Sephardi and Mizrachi content into their subject areas can now see the links. And one more benefit is that I'll go into, of course, as many, is that it's obviously designed for teachers, so it's really realistic and feasible for them. So
I'm going to project my voice because like handing the microphone back and forth is not going to be practicable. Janine, I'm an English teacher. If I wanted to integrate Sephardi and Mizrachi resources into my English curriculum, how would I do?
So just to note, this website is by no means finalised. We're still putting the resources on there. Thank you very much to Suzanne and Naomi for that. So for example, if we scroll down to just the first resource, we click the focus of this lesson, the storytelling. Okay, so this lesson is about specifically Iraqi folk tales, and it's got everything in it. It's very comprehensive. So it's got aim and objectives, a note to a teacher. It's got a presentation that can be presented to students on the same file. It's got the various texts that can enrich this study, as well as, if we go down, external links. Oh, we stop there. I might actually stop there. Scroll up, which can help teachers build their own knowledge of this content, so they feel more confident and have the knowledge to teach this as they see fit, as in a way that is personalised for them. Because for any teachers out there, we know that we can't just copy other people's lessons. It also gives the teachers the confidence and ability to do that. And another thing is that it's really important for teachers to see the cross-disciplinary links. I always try to do that in my teaching. And this lesson plan, it's in English, and obviously it's very, it's got a lot of Jewish values in it as well. And so it's got the English in terms of the structure of text, the tropes of text, but also the Jewish values if we scroll down as well. So this is a really incredible, it's an exciting opportunity to start normalizing Sephardi and Mizrachi culture into other subject areas, as Michael was saying. So,
that's awesome, Janine. My next question is, let's say I was a Jewish studies teacher, and I was Ashkenazi, and I didn't have the background to be able to even begin to teach from a Sephardi point of view. What would I do?
Okay, so of course we acknowledge the expertise and knowledge of Jewish studies teachers. So if we just click Jewish studies in the text, we'll have a look at a couple of them. One benefit of this website is it's not just activities and lesson plans. As I've said, there's also background information, and that's really key to Jewish studies and text because of that really deep knowledge that's required, rather than a single lesson where you only need a bit of content and the rest is supplemented by, for example, the English of the study of text. So, as you can see, links are peppered through, and there's a link to, if we click the first one, I'll just check that that's this. This is
actually the Chabura. This is what Michael was talking about. I have to tell you that the videos in the Chabura are so excellent. I sent them to a student literally today. Excellent historical background on the historical trends of Sephardi.
Yeah, so the idea is really to develop teachers, as I said, confidence and knowledge through giving them different perspectives, different sources, so that they can enrich their own knowledge and start seeing links between what they've already been doing and what else is out there. And
if I was, let's say, not a Jewish studies teacher, but a music teacher, that's why I want to bring the tunes in. How would I do that?
This is actually a really exciting place for collaboration. So click that one. Click music. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so this activity, of course, we've got a lesson plan here, but also links to music, and I'm already hearing from people how they want to include their own versions of this music. So there might be many versions of Lahad or D, which we can play now, and even in that lesson plan there were two, and this is another one. So we can get a deeper sense of
I don't think we'll have much time to go through more of the resource pack, but I really want to thank Janine again, and go look at it for yourself. And again, it's alive, so if there's something that you see in this that you'd like to see in it, please get in touch with Suzanne at New South Wales or nswjbd.org.au, and we will add it. Thanks again to Janine. I'll now pass to Leslie for the business.